the only thing you could really hear is the wind and the noise of different articles actually hitting the poles and whatnot. And I spotted a family right in through this marsh area, and they were holding hands, they were trying to get out, and they made it as far as where this pole is, and essentially what happened is the girl who was holding on to the mother, her hand slipped and she started floating into the marsh, and I swam out and got her and brought her back in, and we used the fence is still there, we used the fence to hold on to guide us back to land. We got back to land, and I just brought them into to my house, which is right at the corner at the time, and we got them new clothes, got them the little girl in the bathtub with warm water, and they actually stayed with us for a week. You couldn't move for about a week. At the same time, there was a house that was behind this house, and people were living in it, and they couldn't get out. They made their way up to the edge of the driveway, so I came down. At that point, I had found a canoe, and I grabbed the canoe and put them in the canoe and dragged them up. I had gone back in the house and put a wetsuit on, and from that point, I came back with the canoe because I heard 2 houses down. I heard a guy yelling for help, and essentially what he was doing is waving a lantern in the window, an old-fashioned lantern, and so I took the canoe down through the water and brought it actually into his living room and took him out of his living room. He come down the stairs, get in the canoe, and I pulled him up, and as it turns out, the guy had a heart condition. So he said I wouldn't have survived in that house. So I brought him up to land. That was 2 doors down, 3 doors down. So that was, and then from that point on, there were just different people that had no electricity that were in the neighborhood. And we were the only ones. We had just tied in across the street, our electrical system. So we were the only ones from this side of the street down to the water that had electricity. So our house lit up like a lighthouse, and so people just found their way. They saw the lights on and they came in, and we ended up with a living room full of people. Some of them, when they announced that somebody came around to the door, banged and said the Atherton House School had opened as a shelter, all of them left except for 2 families. And the next day, another family left. So we had a family, husband, wife, and their 8-year-old daughter stayed with us for the week. The neighborhood was great. I mean, you know, for the following week, there was snow. It was 4.5 feet high, and essentially what we were able to do is take all of our collective food storage and cooked up lunch and dinner all week long. So the neighbors were fantastic. I mean, there's a downside to the storm, which is, you know, fortunately nobody got killed. Somebody could have easily. And the upside of the storm is that feeling of community, people in need helping one another out, and that was extremely evident that whole week. No matter what you needed, you know, people were there for you, whether it was food or Band-Aids or extra clothes or whatever it was. People just kicked in and helped, and it was great community feeling.
I was observer briefer, technician at the National Weather Service with East Boston. That's where they had. The forecasting office was in East Boston, and most in the forecast office for most of New England. Well, you have to remember that this is what we call the 100-year storm, and as in football, you know, say records are made to be broken, and I think such was the case. We had all the information was available to us, and we made our forecast for the information that the forecasting tools gave us, and this is what the conclusion came to. Probably because of the nature of the storm, maybe it probably was a little bit under forecast, but overall the prediction of a severe weather was surely in the minds of all the forecasters, and as such the forecasts were made. And of course, the results of the weather proved to be a little bit higher and more extreme than the timing was no surprise. It came in on that afternoon of February 6th, and it got going in earnest, the extremes, during the afternoon, and at that particular time I was scheduled to go into work at the midnight shift, and I left the office in the afternoon when the storm was just exploding, and I got down to the 128 where I had to abandon my car because it became a blizzard and visibility was down. The conditions were very bad. So of course we just you tried to survive, and I'm sure there were so many people that it was affected during that time that were out in that particular time that had to account for trying to make sure that they were able to survive the weather conditions and try and move on from there. After that, the storm raged into the next day, and it took a couple of days for cleanups to get most of the snow, the roads open, everything like that. A lot of people were stranded. Some people had to stay where they were overnight and take precautions. A lot of storm damage, tidal waves, flooding associated with the storm, and it was quite an experience. And we've had storms since then, but nothing as extreme as what occurred during that period of time. I tried to make it in. I left the house, and I went down 128, and I got down to 128 near the South Shore Plaza, and then the storm was really a raging blizzard. It became a raging blizzard, and any vehicle on the road had to be abandoned, and people had to look out for your livelihood. So I had to abandon my vehicle and make my way back here. And after I got here, I'd always got a telephone call from somebody at my office in the National Weather Service. Don't try to come in because the roads were just impassable and anything like that. So, in a couple of days after the roads were cleaned up, I was scheduled to go to work during the afternoon, an afternoon shift, and of course by that time, most of the people were told on television by the governor of the state of emergency that only emergency people were supposed to be on the road. But I kept going on, and I went into work that afternoon, a couple of days later.
Brant Rock, down by Charlie's old clam stand. It used to be right on the waterfront, and it got just kind of destroyed.
No, I want to know.
This is the roadway going up to Charlie's. It was all dirt. You couldn't really get through there, so we had to have machines to open it all up. Just a pile of dirt that we just get out of the way, or streets that were, you couldn't even pass through them. So we just put the dirt to the side of the road.
Oh, it's right there.
What's this one? That's just a house that got destroyed.
That's what I was just wondering in my own mind.
Get it? There's another road going down by the beach that we couldn't get through there, so we had to have the machine go down to open it up just for us to get through. Just some of the waves coming over the wall.
As I recall, first I was in school at the time at Northeastern, so I went in and I believe I went to 1 or 2 classes, and then at some point decided it was time to head home. because the weather was reporting, the news was reporting that we were expecting snow. I don't think we anticipated as much snow as we were going to get, but I shot home, came home on the expressway, ended up at the fire station because as a young 20-something-year-old fella, that's where you went when you weren't in college. So we went down and hung around the firehouse waiting for calls to come in, and that was, I think I was there for five days or so. I was on dispatch, and that just was something that I'd never seen happen before. I know it happens quite a bit nowadays, but back then it was unheard of. Well, I'll tell you, the town came together. People seemed to be more, they were helping each other as best they could. It was one of those situations where, you know, people were in trouble and other people came and did their best to make it easy, not to make it right, but to make it easy.